Normally, when I don't listen to my wife, bad things happen. That's my talk. Thanks for coming out today. No, when I found out that I'd be speaking here at TEDx, I shared an idea with her, and she said, absolutely not. You cannot start off your TED Talk with a Tumblr quote. But here it goes. There was a thread of people talking about the increased number of people being diagnosed with autism over the years. And within this thread, a person with autism shared the following thought. They said, disability exists within the context of the environment. Disability exists within the context of the environment. And they went on to say that the environment isn't making people autistic in the sense of some chemical causing brain damage, but rather we've created a modern environment which is hostile to autistic people, effectively making them even more disabled. Disability exists in the context of the environment. I like to hold that quote alongside another one, and that is, if you don't like the game, change the rules. An example of this that affects all of us was the tax code changes that took place last year, right? The people in power decided that they didn't like the way that the game was played, so they changed the rules. And when you hold these quotes side by side, disability exists in the context of the environment, and if you don't like the game, change the rules, a new idea begins to emerge. If you change the environment, the disability fades into the background. So how does this play out in real life? 2 examples. The first, take a wheelchair. This incredible piece of equipment helps millions of people to be able to get around. But if you lived in a home that has a number of steps to get in and out of it, you're stuck. You can't get out of your own home. So what do? Build a ramp, right? You've changed the environment. The disability's still there, but it's no longer the focal point. And a person has the ability to be re-engaged with their community. Second, who here wears corrective eyewear, right? 60% of the developed world uses glasses, contacts, or has had laser eye surgery. Without these glasses, I'm legally blind. And in the history of the world, it wasn't too long ago that without this piece of technology, my ability to contribute to society would have been greatly diminished. Disability exists in the context of the environment, and if you change the environment, the disability fades into the background. So by wearing these pieces of plastic and metal, I've changed my environment. You have changed your environment, and your disability fades into the background. For the last decade, I've been obsessed with how people live together in different ways. First as a resident assistant in college, then as part of a home for troubled teens, and for the vast majority of my professional career, I've worked alongside people with developmental disabilities and their families. And when I tell people that I'm in this line of work, they frequently say, oh, I could never do that. That's incredibly difficult work. And sure, just like any job has its tough times, my life has gotten significantly better because of the people that I've gotten to know. I'd like you to close your eyes just for a minute. Close your eyes. And imagine the following situation. You're 82 years old. Your wife is receiving hospice care, and it's not going well. You have a 57-year-old daughter. She lives in a group home. She can barely speak. She needs 24-hour care. You have a 48-year-old son. He too lives in a group home. He can't speak. He has seizures. He needs help in the bathroom. You believe that he's been actively abused by his housemates. What are you feeling? Can you put words to the fear that lives in the pit of your stomach? Can you express the sense of powerlessness that exists when you question the ability and motives of the people entrusted to care for your children? As you open your eyes, I can tell you that of all the parents that I worked with, of all the different backgrounds, they had one unifying question. What's going to happen to my child when I can no longer take care of them or when I pass away? In 2014, 82-year-old Frank Stack of Elmhurst, Illinois, couldn't take it any longer. On a Saturday morning, Frank went and picked up his son and daughter from their respective group homes and brought them back to the family house. At 6:33, Frank called the manager of his son's group home and said, "I need you to do a favor for me. I need you to call my daughter Gloria. She lives in Wisconsin. Here's her number. I need you to tell her that there are 4 bodies in Elmhurst dead. I've shot Joan, Frankie, and Mary, and I'm about to shoot myself." And as the manager pleaded with him, Frank said, "I got to do what I got to do," before hanging up the phone and taking his own life. Without question, what Frank Stack did was horrific. However, it is unacceptable that any person should have to live with the fear that tormented Frank. As a society, we must wrestle with the consequences and reality that there are people in this room that hope that their child dies before they do so that they know where their loved one is at. It makes me angry that there are millions of people that live with this reality day in and day out. We have to do better. We must do better. A number of years ago, I ran across a quote that would change my life forever. Often when we're talking about what we're going to give our lives to, we ask the question of ourselves and those around us. What do you love? What is it that when you do it, you feel alive? You think, man, I could do this forever. I was made for this. So when we're talking about calling and mission and vocation and purpose, what we're going to give our life to, one of the questions we often ask is, what do you love? But there's another question we can ask. What makes you angry? What is it that when you see it, you think, that's wrong? Somebody should do something about that. What is it that when you see it, it stirs something within you that someone should devote themselves to that? Somebody should make a difference there. Somebody should help them. Maybe that somebody's you. We need to listen to our anger because God may be using it to get our attention. Now, anger is a lot like fire. And when there's a fire burning in our bellies, we have 3 different courses of action that we can take. The first, we view anger most commonly as explosive. You throw gasoline on the fire and it turns into a fit of rage, and this frequently results in violence. And while this flash of anger can bring attention to what is going on, it frequently has the exact opposite effect as the desired outcome. This outburst looks impressive, but there frequently is little substance behind it. It's hard to sustain, and people get burnt in the process. Or, what happens when you don't feed a fire? It dies. When a person doesn't engage with their anger, they become complacent. You've seen this. Major societal, structural, systemic issues get boiled down to, it's just how things are. No, This may be how things are now, but it's not right. It doesn't have to be this way. Anger should not be ignored. And finally, anger can be controlled. This fire burning in our bellies, this energy, we can harness it. And if channeled in the right directions, anger can change everything. In Indiana, like many states, when a person with a developmental disability graduates from high school, frequently at age 22, support services for that person fall off a cliff until parents turn 80 years old or pass away. Let me repeat that for emphasis and clarity. For a family with a loved one with autism, Down syndrome, a traumatic brain injury, or any number of different developmental disabilities, until the parents turn 80 years old or pass away, there are few to no good long-term housing and support solutions for that person. And for those people that are diagnosed or is seen as higher functioning, those people have even fewer options than that. For the 18 months that I was a program manager, my life centered around 45 families who had little hope in the only system that was offered to them. They would come to me and say, "What options do we have?" And I didn't have an answer. If you don't like the game, change the rules. Something new needed to be created. Something new that could address the needs of the parents and other family members. Something new that could recognize the uniqueness of each individual person living in the homes. Something new that would not only allow caregivers to continue doing the work that they love, but to make a career path out of it. A new system needed to be created that recognized that disability exists within the context of the environment. And if you change the environment, the disability fades into the background. In 2015, I left my job to start a privately funded nonprofit organization called CAS Housing. CAS stands for Customizable, Affordable, Sustainable, and Safe. And our sole pursuit is to create family-driven housing options for people with developmental disabilities. Now, starting CAS has been the most difficult thing that I have ever done in my life. It has been hard to craft this program that could adapt on a person-by-person and a house-by-house basis. We've run into countless roadblocks at a city zoning ordinance and state building code guidelines. I'd be lying if I told you that there weren't a number of times that I wanted to quit. And then I think of Frank and Joan and Mary and Frankie. I think of the 131 families on our waiting list and the thousands of others in our community that face the same fear Frank felt. And I get angry. And I get back to work. In this moment, what is it that makes you angry? What's the fire burning in your belly? Don't let it get out of control, but don't ignore it. Don't get complacent. Right? Lean into it and don't stop. Do something with it. For me, this journey has taught me to see disability as diversity rather than deficit. I'd like you to meet a friend of mine named David. David has Down syndrome, and David gives fantastic hugs. And when I get a hug from David, I know that I am the most beloved person in the world in that moment. How can I love another like David loves? 2.5 years ago, this picture was taken with one of our daughters and Josh has autism. And ever since this picture was taken, Every single time that I see Josh, he asks me how my wife and 3 kids are doing because he deeply cares for them. Aren't these raw expressions of truth and love what we're all looking for out of life? See, if we continually judge people by what they cannot do, we will be forever defined by our deficits. But everyone, every single person, they bring something to the table. Einstein said, everybody's a genius. But if you judge a fish by its ability to climb a tree, it will spend its entire life thinking that it's stupid. The question isn't, does a person have a disability? We all have disabilities. The question is, do we have control over our environment? Now, one of the most used signature lines in corporate American email is, be the change you wish to see in the world. It's a very inspiring quote, and this may be a tad presumptuous of me, but I'd like to add on to Gandhi's work. Be the change you wish to see in the world, because no one else is going to do the work. Whatever it is that makes you angry, start digging. Find out what all the rules are. Find out why the rules are the way that they are. And if you don't like the way that the game is played, find a way to change the rules. Find a way to change the environment. Thank you.